Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. Tonight we are going to be learning Maseches Yoma, Daf Ayin, starting the 70th blot of this Masechta, and we're in the midst of Perek Balo Kohen Gadol, moving throughout the avoda of Yom HaKippurim. So right now we're about 2/3 of the way down. The first word on the line in my Gemara is ve'ahani, and we're starting with the words b'ma'arava masnu hachi. Yesterday on Shabbos we were learning a drasha. And there's another way to learn the drasha of those psukim. We were talking about the word gadol. How did we understand the word gadol that was used in the pasuk? So it says the Gemara, 2/3 of the way down on Samach Testament Beis, b'ma'arava masnu hachi. This is how they learn the words. Rav Gidol Amar Gadol Shegidol b'Shem HaMeforish, that they made Hakadosh Baruch Hu great by using the actual name of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, a name that we don't say. Rav Masna Amar, no, he says that this is a reference to the Anshe Knesset Hagdola, who incorporated into davening Hakel Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora. And in fact, this latter opinion of Rav Masna about Hakel Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora, V'Had Rav Masna, Mitaya L'De Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Very, very interesting language, Mitaya. Seems to be a little bit strange. In fact, the Gra changes it to Misayeya, which definitely fits more of our parlance, which is Misayeya L'De Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Don't Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. How does Rav Masna's shita that we're talking about Hakel Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora, the Anshe Knesset Hagdola? How do we know that that makes sense? Because what did Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi say? Lama nikra Shimon Anshe Knesset Hagdola. Why is it that the people who were called the Anshe Knesset Hagdola were given such a title? So the Gemara answers because shehechziru atar liyoshna. They brought back the crown of old. What is this referring to? Well, for us to understand this, we have to see the following story in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Asa Moshe Amar Hakel Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora. That's already a pasuk in Chumash. The pasuk in Chumash says, Hakel Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora. That pasuk can be found in Sefer Dvar. Asa Yirmiyah, but in the times of Yirmiyah, things were not so good. V'amar Nachar Mekarkerin Behechalo. The Nachrim, there were non-Jews who were making noise in the Heichal. And because of that, Aye Nora Osav, where was the Nora of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Wasn't present because the Goyim had taken over the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, in his language, when Yirmiyahu was talking, Lo Amar Nora. And then similarly, though with a different word, a different of the accolades that Moshe Rabbeinu had said, Asa Daniel Amar Nachar Mishtabden Bivanav. Here we have a problem that the Nachrim, that the non-Jews are subjugating the Jews. Aye Gvurosav, where is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's greatness? So therefore, when Daniel was talking in his Sefer, Lo Amar Gibor. So then the Anshe Knesset Hagdola says, no, you got it wrong. That's not correct. Says the Gemara, Asa Inhu V'Amru Adarabah. We're about 12 lines from the bottom of Samach Testament Beis. The Anshe Knesset Hagdola said, you got it all backwards. Zohi Gvurasa. We said that there was a lack of Gvura. Where was the Gvura of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So Gvurasa Shekovish es Yitzro, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not do as he instinctively wanted to do, which was to wipe out these enemies. Shenos and Ercha Paim L'Rashoyim. And what was the Nora? Ve'elu Hey Nora Osav Shel Male Moro Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Without the awesomeness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Heach Uma Achas Yechol Liskayim Bein HaUmos. How could this nation ever have lived the way that we have lived over the course of time amongst other nations dispersed? In fact, there are those who use this as a rationale for the Jewish authenticity, because one of the things they say is that there has never been a people who's been exiled and then come back to their original land. It doesn't ever happen, not in the history books. That's how some people talk. Okay, fine. So then the Gemara says, V'Rabbanan, these great rabbis referencing Yirmiyahu and Daniel, who remove the words of both Gvura and Nora, respectively. How could they have removed this language? This was language in a pasuk in Chumash from Moshe Rabbeinu. How could they have removed such language? So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Elazar, mitoch sheyoden be'HaKadosh Baruch Hu she'amitihu. They weren't questioning HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They were looking at the scenario and they said, in this scenario, there's no Gvura. In this scenario, there's no Nora. Says the Gemara, lefichach lo kizvubo. It wasn't considered to be a slight. Okay, 2 dots, about 7 lines from the bottom of the page. Our Mishnah had said, V'korei acharei mos ve'ach be'asor. We had said that the Kohen Gadol, at this point, would read from the Sefer Torah, and he would read from the parsha of Achrei Mos and from the parsha that begins with Ach Be'asor. So says the Gemara, that's a problem. We have a contradiction with another source in the Tanaim, or Minhi. We have a halacha, Medalgin B'Navi, and we see this all the time. When we lay in klaf in our base medrash, and the 2 portions of the Haftorah are split by a number of psukim, the halacha is that the Baal Koreh will read from the cloth, he'll read a little bit and then he'll stop and then he'll move to the next place. Medalgin, you're allowed to skip when it comes to Nevi'im. However, the Brisa writes, Ve'ein medalgin b'Torah. So you wanted to say that the Kohen Gadol started an Achremos and switched to Ach Be'asor. Those are not next to each other, and that should not be allowed because this Brisa says Ve'ein medalgin b'Torah. So answers the Gemara, Lo kasha, it depends. When do we say medalgin b'Torah? It depends when we say it. Kan b'chdei sheyafsik haturgaman. Kan b'chdei shelo yafsik haturgaman. It depends how long of a break you took. Back in the day, it was customary that they'd have someone translating the psukim and chumash into the modern vernacular, whatever it was. And you were allowed to switch in the Torah as long as the break you took was short enough that by the time the Maturgaman finished talking, you were already at your second place. Like, you know how when we lane on fast days, where Shivasa B'Tammuz is going to be coming up soon. So we lane, and the laning is like a column apart in the middle of the three aliyahs that we say in the morning when we lane. So that's mutter because the break is very short. So that just depends how long the break is. So says the Gemara, 5 lines from the bottom. That's not correct because alok tani on that brisa we have the following language: medalgin b'navi ve'ein medalgin b'Torah. That you're not allowed to skip, even if the break is a very short break, you're not allowed to skip in the Torah. The same exact distance, you have to make sure, but that only applies to Navi. It seems to be that this brisa specifically excludes a person who is reading Torah to be medaleg, to skip. So if that's true, we're back to where we started. How could the Kohen Gadol read from Achremos and then subsequently from Ach Be'asor, which are located in different parts of the Torah? Hare, this brisa doesn't allow for it at all. You're not allowed to have any break whatsoever. You cannot skip at all when you're learning from the Chumash. So Amar Abaye, 3 lines from the bottom, Lo kasha kan be'inyan echad kan b'shnei inyanim. It depends. Depends what we're talking about. When it's inyan echad, when it's all talking about the same thing, so then you're allowed to roll the sefer. That's not considered inappropriate, and you can be middalig. However, kan b'shnei inyanim, when it comes to the Torah, you're not allowed to be meddalig b'shnei inyanim v'hatanya. This v'hatanya, as Rashi says, the last Rashi on the page is benichusa. We should be very appreciative for Rashi when he says this, because when I first learned this Gemara, I'm like, oh, v'hatanya, hold on 1 second, this can't be right. But then the proof perfectly matched what I was reading before, so it couldn't be a kasha, because I didn't look at Rashi. So that's a musar on me. Rashi says, benichusa, that we have a very clear indicator that this is a continuation of the theme. And this brisa is very clear. 2 lines from the bottom, Samach Tesem and Beis v'hatanya, the brisa writes, medalgin b'Torah be'inyan echad. This is merging everything together that we've learned in the last few lines. Yes, one can skip from one section in the Torah to another as long as it's be'inyan echad. The dogma by us, it's all about Yom Kippur. Uvenavi, and when someone is reading out of a klaf or navi, the halacha is b'shnei inyanim. You can even move from one inyan to another inyan, no problem. But kan v'kan b'chdei shelo yafsik haturgaman. It has to be a very short break, so that had there been a translator, that by the time that you find your new location, the translator wasn't done talking yet. However, you can't go from Yeshayahu to Yirmiyahu l'dugma. That's not allowed. You can't switch books of Navi. That's not appropriate. But uvenavi shel shnei masar medalgin, when it comes to the Navi that we refer to as shnei masar, there we allow a person to be medalik, top of ayin amud aleph. Ubilvad shelo yedalik misofa sefer l'tchilaso. However, you shouldn't go from the end of the book to the beginning. What does that mean? End of the book to the beginning? Look at the masterful one-word Rashi, limafreya. It doesn't mean from the last pasuk to the first. It doesn't mean from the last third to the first third. It means anything that's out of order. You're allowed to skip only moving forward in the sefer, but not moving backwards. Without Rashi, it would have been very hard to understand this Gemara, and Kedarko Bakodesh, that Rashi in one word is able to explain this idea so succinctly. Second line of Ayin Amud Aleph says the Gemara Begolol Sefer Torah. We said he wraps up the Torah B'chulei B'kol Kach Lama K'dei Shelo Hotzi Laz Al Sefer Torah. And why is it that he had to say that line that I know that we finished reading here, but I'm going to do a little bit of reading Baal Peh, don't worry, it was actually written in the Torah. Why did the Kohen Gadol have to say that? Because we didn't want people to think that there was something missing in the Torah and make a laws about the Sefer Torah. And then people will say later, no, that's the Kohen Gadol's Torah and it was missing something because he didn't read it inside. Incorrect. Well, he wasn't missing anything. And in order to work around the concern of what people might have thought, so therefore he said out loud that don't worry, it's still written in the Torah. Third line, uve'asor. Uve'asor shel chumash haPekudim kore al peh, and for the psukim in chumash haPekudim and Bamidbar that he would read by heart. Amai, why was he reading by heart? Niglol v'nikre, roll the Torah to a new place and read. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna Bered Rabbi Yoshua Amar Rav Sheshes. The Amoraim had this very early on in the Amoraim. Lefi she'en golul in Sefer Torah b'tzibur mipnei kavod hatzibur. It's not nice. It's not nice for the tzibur. It's a tircha de tzibur, as we call it in our parlance. It's not nice to be rolling the Sefer Torah while the whole room is sitting there quiet. They can't talk. They're not nothing. They're just trapped. And because the gabbai forgot to roll this, that's not right. The gabbai of the shul has an achrayus to make sure that the Sifrei Torah are where they're supposed to be. 1, 2, and 3, however many Sifrei Torah, they have to all be in the right place. Mesudar, organized. Fine. Okay, I understand you can't be megalel, that you shouldn't be rolling it as tircha de tzibura, but go get another Sefer Torah. What, they only had one Sefer Torah in the Beis Hamikdash? That's impossible. Of course they had more. So says the Gemara, why did they not just go get a second Sefer Torah? Rav Huna bar Yehuda Amar Mishum Pegamo Shel Rishon. He was afraid of a secondary concern that people would say that there's something wrong with the first one if you went to go get a second one. It's an interesting line to say, considering we just said you're not allowed to roll. Everyone should know the reason why you're getting a second Sefer Torah. So maybe it's because they didn't come out together from the Aron. Okay, it's different ways to understand the Gemara. And then says the Gemara, our second shita. Rish Lakish Amar, no. The reason why you shouldn't get out a second Sefer Torah is mishum bracha she'ena tzricha, because there will be a bracha that's going to be made on this Sefer Torah that maybe we didn't need to make it all. Okay, fine. And then says the Gemara against both of these shitas. Michai shina lepegama. Why, you're so concerned about people looking back at the first Sefer Torah? There's nothing wrong with this at all. When Rosh Chodesh Teves, which always falls out on Chanukah, right? Because Chanukah is at the end of Kislev. So this Rosh Chodesh Teves, that's Shabbos, 3 Sifrei Torah. So says the Gemara, Mevin Shalosh Toros v'Koran Echad B'Inyono Shel Yom v'Achas B'Shel Rosh Chodesh v'Achas Shel Chanukah. You just tried to tell me that maybe the reason why the Kohen Gadol didn't take out an extra Sefer Torah was because it's a pigam. Well, what do you mean it's a pigam? We do it every single Rosh Chodesh. We do a Rosh Chodesh on Shabbos. We have 2 Sifrei Torah, and on Shabbos Chanukah, that's the best example where we have 3 Sifrei Torah. It says the Gemara about a quarter of the way down, 5, 6 lines before the white lines. Tlasa gavre but tlasa sifrei leka pigama. When there are 3 different people, each of them making their own bracha in each of the various Sifrei Torah, that's not a pigam. But in this case, where the Kohen Gadol was going to be the only person reading from the Sefer Torah, to go get another Sefer Torah, he's the only one making a bracha. Chad gavra b'trei sifrei ika pegama. But when one person is the only one being mevarach over 2 Sifrei Torah, so when does this come up? It comes up when there really is a pegam in the first Sefer Torah. So let's say that there's a Baal Koreh. You always know that everything's a problem when the Baal Koreh leans over really close during lading. The whole room is like, oh no. Is this going to happen now? Fine. When I was in yeshiva, when I was in smicha, we had this as well. They had, the halacha is that when a reish, you can't tell the difference between a reish and a dalid, or between a vav and a nun sofis. So some of the poskim say that you bring a child to look, because a child is totally mesiach lefi tumo. He doesn't have any ulterior motivators. Hi, sweetheart, what letter is this? So we did this in yeshiva once. This kid got up on a stool, looks in the Sefer Torah, and he paskin the shaila, and he paskin the kula. He said it was the right letter, the letter that was supposed to be there. But now it needed to be fixed to make sure that these shailas wouldn't repeat themselves. But that's the only time that we ever switched Sifrei Torah, but it's not appropriate. So therefore, because it wasn't appropriate to roll because of Tircha de Tzibura, and because he was the only one getting the aliyah, so therefore it wasn't appropriate for him to do anything else other than to say it by heart, which is exactly what he did. 1/3 of the way down on Ayin Amud Aleph, let's continue. We said in our Mishnah that he makes a whole host of brachos. He made a bracha ala Torah, the same brachos that we'd make by laning, al ha'avoda, the bracha of ritzeva, al ha'uda, the bracha of modem, val mechilas ha'avon, ketikna. All of these things are listed in the siddur. Some of the meforshim say the mechilas ha'avon is talking about a bracha of kapara that we say in the Machzor on Yom Kippur. Ve'al mikdash b'fnei atzma, ve'al kohanim b'fnei atzma, the brachas on the mikdash and kohanim, ve'al Yisrael b'fnei atzma, ve'al sha'ar tefillah. What's sha'ar tefillah? What does that even mean? On the rest of davening? What does that mean? So it says the Gemara, I'll tell you what it means. First long line, Tana Rabbanan. The rabbis have taught us. Ush'ara tefillah. What kind of tefillah was that? Quote, Rina tchina bakasha. These various languages of tefillah. So it says the Gemara, that's the Sefer Shari Tefillah. Sefer Shari Tefillah, he writes what all of these different lashonos are. It's sort of, Rav Pinkus. So in his Sefer, I think it's called Shari Tefillah. I think that's what it's called. I can't remember right now. But anyways, there he goes through what is Rina, what is Tchina. He goes through all the different ones. It's a beautiful, Sefer. So that he says they're all the different languages. What's the Tefillah? Rina Tchina Bakasha milefanecha al amcha Yisrael shetzrichen lihivasheh. They need to be saved. V'chosei, what was the closing of that bracha? He would say, B'shomei tefillah, Baruch atah Hashem, shomei tefillah. After that took place, v'achar kach kol echad v'echad, maybe Sefer Torah, maybe everyone would bring a Sefer Torah if they had one. V'korei bo kedei leharos chazuso le'rabim, to show that they were fulfilling this beautiful mitzvah. Halfway down, haroah kohen gadol v'chulei, lo mipnei she'enu rishon. Remember what we said, that while they were burning the shiur and the par, they were not able to be there and where they were laning at the same time. So it says the Gemara, Pshita, that should be pretty obvious. It says the Gemara, no, you missed the point. You might have thought that maybe there was a different concern about Reish Lakish. What was the concern of Reish Lakish? Dama Reish Lakish. He said, you're not allowed to pass up on a mitzvah. So you might have thought it's usher to leave one to go to the other. What mitzvah? Says the Gemara, my mitzvah, berovam hadras melech, a very halachic consideration. This is one of the reasons why Rabbanim of Shuls don't like breakaway minyanim. It's not only because it detracts from the quality of what's going on, but you're in violation of a mitzvah. It's not an isser, but it's you're losing out on the opportunity of Barovam Hadras Melech. So when there isn't a need, okay, so that's different. So sometimes it happened to be the case. I remember once a few weeks ago, I think Rabbi Robinson had to go somewhere. He had to go to a simcha and another shul. The only way he was going to make musaf was with a breakaway. Sure, then it's not a breakaway when the Rav of the shul says, I need help making a minyan. But otherwise, a person should try to daven in a shul. It's not okay, COVID, fine, totally understood. Otherwise, we should try to be davening in shul because it's a fulfillment of the principle of Baravam Hadras Melech. So Havamina says the Gemara, that maybe you're not allowed to go back and forth from the place where you're hearing the Kriyas Torah to the place where they're burning the shiur and the par. Kamash Malon, that's not the concern under these circumstances. That brings us to the next Mishnah. And the next Mishnah continues right where we left off. We had said that if the Kohen Gadol wants to read in his big day vutz, in the linen, the white linen garments, he's allowed. Or if he wanted to wear his own clothing, he could. But, says the Mishnah halfway down, im big day vutz kore, if in fact he was reading in the linen clothing, then, well, here's what he should do. Kidesh yadav v'raglav, he should wash his hands and feet. And then pasha, change his clothes. Yorad v'toval olav anistapag, he should go down to the mikvah, go under the water. He should come out of the water and dry off. Ve'vilo big day zahav, and they should bring him the gold clothing. V'lavash v'kidesh yadav v'raglav v'yotza. And then he would go get fully dressed in the golden garments, and he would do another kiddush adayim v'raglaim. And then ve'asa es elo ve'es ayal ha'am, more korbanos. This is his own ayal and the ayal of the Jewish people. And as well, ve'es shivas kvasim tamimim b'nei shana, and also the 7 animals that were less than a year old. Divi Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Akiva Omer, im tamid shel shachar hayu kraven. These 7 were shechted with the tamid shel shachar. These next 2 words are subject to discussion in the Gemara. Where are they connected to? Upar ha'ola. Are they connected to the previous sentence of shel shachar hayu kraven upar ha'ola, that it was shechted in the morning time? Or do we say upar ha'ola usiir hanase bachutz hayu kraven tam shel ben arba'im? We don't know. The Gemara is going to deal with that in a minute, but that's how it reads. A little difficult to understand within the framework of the Mishnah. And then at that point, after he did all of that, then Kidesh Yadav V'Raglav, he would again sanctify his hands and feet. Upashat, he'd remove his clothing, V'Yard V'Tavel V'Alav V'Nistapag, and then he'd go into the mikvah. He would go under the water. He'd come out. He'd dry off. Hevi'lo Big Day Lavan V'Lavash. He would give him again the white vestment and give him the white linen clothing. He'd get dressed again, and then again the Kidesh Yadav V'Raglav. Remember, he did 10 of these throughout the day. So this is, I don't know what number we're up to, but quite a few so far. And then Nichnas Lahotzi Esakaf Esamachta. Then he went back in Lifnai V'Lifnim to go get the kalim from the Ketores. He went to go get the kaf and the machta. He went to get the machta that held the coals, and the kaf had held the Ketores, and he left them there. They were boiling hot. You couldn't take them out. They were boiling hot coals, and they're by now they've cooled down already. So he went back in to go get them. And then after that, he went down and he sanctified his hands and went to the mikvah again. Then they put on his gold clothing, and then he would wash his hands and feet again. Then now we're in the afternoon now. Then he would bring the Ketores in the afternoon, and then as well he would clean out the candles in the menorah in the heichal. After that point, he had finished all of his work. They gave him his own clothes. Then they would walk him home. Oh, a gewalt. You finished all the hard work today, says the Mishnah. And then v'yom tov haya oseh le'ohava b'shah sheyatza b'shalom min hakodesh. This is fascinating. They made a suda for him. On Yom Kippur? No, it wasn't on Yom Kippur, but they did plan a Tzeis L'Shalom party, not like a goodbye party, but like that you exited the Mikdash b'Shalom after everything that went and you did it right. Beautiful. That brings us to the Gemara, which is going to highlight this one line that's very hard to understand. I don't understand, says the Gemara. There's two ways to understand what happened with the par ha'ola. Remember, this is the second par we're dealing with. The first par was the par of the Kohen Gadol that he paid for with his own money. This one was from the Tzibur. So what about this par? So says the Gemara, was it im tamid shal shachar hayu kreven, comma, that the 7 animals were karev in the morning. And then separately, upar ha'ola v'sir hanase b'chutz im tamid shal bein ha'arbaim. Do we say that the par ha'ola goes with the latter category? And that animal was in fact taken care of by the tamid shal bein ha'arbaim. Or Dilmor, perhaps do we say hachikamar? Maybe it's a little different. Im tamid shal shachar hayu kreven upar ha'ola behadaihu. And really the par ha'ola goes in the morning service. V'sir hanase b'chutz. And then we continue the Mishnah as we had the Mishnah above, that the shiur, the korban musaf, im tamid shal bein ha'arbaim was done in the afternoon. So that's question number 1. We don't know where the par ha'ola was karev. Was it done with the morning or was it done with the afternoon ones? Unclear from the Gemara. And then Visu, and furthermore, we have another question. Par ha'ola, the whole korban itself, was only referenced by one of the Tanaim. The Rabbi Eliezer, the shiur, he left it out of our Mishnah. Emas avid le. He doesn't talk about it at all. So when would he then bring this par ha'ola? So that's question number 2. Visu, and furthermore, 7 lines from the bottom. Ayin Omid Aleph. Visu, and furthermore, Bein le Rabbi Eliezer, Bein le Rabbi Akiva. According to both of them, there's another glaring omission, which is as follows: Emurechatos emas avidu. What about the leftover components of the korbanos? When were they going to be burnt? No reference in the Mishnah at all. These questions are not understood at all. So 5 lines from the bottom, Amarava lo mishkachas lu maskanta. None of this is going to be fixed over here. Our Mishnayos don't talk about it. However, Ella, Ola Rabbi Eliezer, the Tana Debe Shmuel. Either we can look at a source in the Tanaim and Tana Debe Shmuel, or Rabbi Akiva, Kid Tosefta. There are 2 Mari Makomos that do answer these questions, but you should not anticipate to see these in Mishnayos here in Maseches Yoma because they're not in the Mishnayos in Maseches Yoma. And therefore, what are each of these Mari Makomos? So the Gemara says, 4 lines from the bottom, the Tana Debe Shmuel, that first Mari Makom says as follows: Rabbi Eliezer, Omer, Yotzav Asa'elo ve'el ha'am, ve'emurechatas. We see here that he includes the emurechatas already in the beginning. Aval par ha'ola v'shivas kvasim v'sir hanase b'chutz im tam shel bein ha'arbaim. So we didn't know how Rabbi Eliezer held, and now we know with clarity. Emurechatas are in the morning, and the par ha'ola was in the afternoon with the shivas kvasim. Rabbi Akiva de Tosefta Mahi. What was the Mari Makom that spoke about Rabbi Akiva in the Tosefta? So there the Gemara says as follows. We are just at the bottom of the page. Tanya, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Par ha'ola v'shivas kvasim im tam shel shachar hayu kreven. Could you imagine what a wild machlokas this is? We're talking about when 8 animals were shechted in the Beis HaMikdash on Yom Kippur, and we don't know. That is remarkable. It's terribly sad that we don't have a clear trajectory of what actually took place. It's amazing. It's very sad how that can be. But that's what the Gemara says, is that according to Rabbi Eliezer, they were done in the afternoon. According to Rabbi Akiva, they were done in the morning. Shene Emar. What is the source for Rabbi Akiva within the Brisa? Then he would do all of the sprinklings, turning to the top of Daf. Then you do the Korban Mosaf. Shenemar Seir Easy Mechad Chatas Milavad Chatas Akipurim. Ve'achar Kach, after that, Ayalova El Ha'am. Ve'achar Kach Emure Chatas. Ve'achar Kach Tamid Shel Bein Ha'arbaim. So according to Rabbi Akiva, the way he learns this flow is that all of this was done prior to the afternoon. Very good. My time with Rabbi Eliezer. What was the reason why Rabbi Eliezer put these korbanos in the afternoon? So says the Gemara, Avid Kidechsiv. He followed the flow of the Torah. Avid Beresha, the Torah's Kohanim. The Torah's Kohanim, when you see this in the Gemara to reference to Sefer Vayikra, Torah's Kohanim is the book of the Kohanim that refers to all the halachos of the Kohanim. So first he looked at the psukim in Sefer Vayikra and he executed accordingly. V'hadar, and afterwards, Avid Chumash HaPekudim, then he would follow the halachos that were indicated in Sefer Bamidbar. So Rabbi Eliezer was looking in Chumash, and the Chumash seemed to indicate a flow. This gets into the sugya of Ein Muktam Umuchar B'Torah. Okay, who says that they were written in such a way that you can determine the sequence? Fine, but that's not for here. The Gemara doesn't go into this. I'm just raising that it begs the question a little bit, that if he's saying that he's going in order, Sefer Vayikra said 1, 2, and 3, and Sefer Bamidbar said 4, 5, and 6. Many Tanaim hold ein muktam u'muchar b'Torah. So you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 could have been 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. We have no idea. So that's not raised here, but it's a stama discussion to have. Rabbi Akiva, what do you do about this? What do you do about this idea? So it says the Gemara, Kedekatani Taima, Milevado Lasa Boker Shelo Lasa Tamid, Alma Musaf Inim Tamid Shal Shachar Avilahu. He says, I understand what you're saying. The Vayikra comes before Bamidbar. What I don't understand is how you don't read this pasuk the way that I read it, because this pasuk indicates that the Korban Musaf should be with the morning. Rabbi Eliezer, what do you do about that? He says, no. What does he do with the pasuk for which Rabbi Akiva indicated dafka that the Korban Musaf should be in the morning? He says, no, that pasuk teaches us that the Korban that's done inside the Kodesh and the one that's done outside the Kodesh both can generate kapara. So we took a bit of a pause here to do the my taimas, the last 5 lines or so. We're going to go back into the Tosefta. Let's go back. Rabbi Huda Omer, Mishmo, he says in the name, it doesn't say who, but the Meforshim explain, he says in the name of Rabbi Akiva. What did Rabbi Akiva say? Rabbi Akiva was of the opinion that with the Korban Tamid in the morning, he also did the Korban Musaf, and he also did the 7 animals. So says the Gemara, within the 7 animals, there's a machlokes. He says, Rabbi Huda says in the name of Rabbi Akiva, Mishmo, Echad Karev im Tamid Shal Shachar. One of the 7 young animals was karev when in the morning with the tamid shel shachar. V'shisha im tamid shel bein harabayim, and 6 of them were shechted in the afternoon. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon Omer Mishmo, he argues against Rabbi Huda as it relates to Rabbi Akiva, and he says no. Shisha karev and im tamid shel shachar. 6 of them were shechted in the morning. Ve'echad im tamid shel bein harabayim. So that's the machlokes. Of the 7, was it 1 in the morning, 6 in the afternoon, or 6 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon? The total number is the same, but the breakup is a little bit different. Is it 1 and 6 or 6 and 1? It says the Gemara, "My tamayu derabanan." According to both of them, we need to figure something out here, out over here. Why is it that it's spread out over both? Why don't we just leave it all 7 in the morning or all 7 of the young animals in the afternoon? So it says the Gemara halfway down, because we couldn't. Trei krai ksive. We have 2 psukim. Ksiv milvado lasa boker, ksiv vayetze ve'asa solasa. Hilkach avi minayu hacha. Based on the psukim, we didn't have a choice. The first pasuk was talking about the morning. The second pasuk was talking about the afternoon. And each of them referencing the 7 animals. Therefore, some of the animals have to be shechted by morning and some of them have to be shechted by afternoon. Our hands are stuck. Fine. So then, b'mai kamiflage. But then what are you arguing about 1 and 6 and 6 and 1? These 7 animals that were less than 1 year old had to be karev. Okay, you had to split them up over the morning and the afternoon because the psukim say as much. Fine, I understand. But what are you arguing about when you say that of the 7 young animals, 1 has to be karev in the shachar and 1 has to be karev in the ben arbaim? Why? What are you arguing about? The other shita says the reverse. But my kamiflage. So says the Gemara. Rabbi Huda Savar, the reason why you're Ovid Chad is because Kiddichsi, the pasuk writes, Milvado la saboker, the Hadar, Ovid Avodas Hayom, Dilma Chul Shachalish Kohen Gadol. His concern was that if you give him such a massive number of korbanos first thing in the morning, he could have some chalisha sadas. It's too much. You guys, you're giving me too much work to do. It's too much. So this shita was concerned about the chalisha. Almost sounds like a psychological Gemara. You're so concerned about the Kohen's well-being. He doesn't know what he signed up for. He knows exactly. Psukim and chumash. He's got to sit and learn. He's got to learn how to make the Torahs, whatever. He's a busy guy. He knows exactly what's happening. But they said, based on psukim, it doesn't have to be that all 7 are in the morning. They're not allowed to be that way. But he says the 1 should be in the morning and the 7 in the afternoon because of chalisha sakoin. Then the Gemara says 2/3 of the way down, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, who said that 6 were in the morning and 1 was in the afternoon. Savar kevan de aschil. Once he already starts with korbanos and avid shisha, then he does most of what he should do of the 7 young animals. However, Dilma Pasha, we're afraid that maybe he'd be concerned a little bit later, but really we're not so concerned. The Gemara is not so concerned about that, but that explains his shita. However, if we were to look back in our Mishnah, we would agree that there was the ayal of the Kohen Gadol and there was also the ayal of the Jewish people, but there was only 1 of each of those ayals. There were not 2 of them. Where did this come from? Keman kirevi. The Tanya Rebbe Omer ayal echad amor kan hu amar b'chom shabikudim in Vayikra. And in Bamidbar, when it speaks about the ayal for the Jewish people, so that is only 1 animal. Really, there were not 1, there were 2. So because here we say there are 2, it must therefore be that our Mishnah is Rebbe, because Rebbe said that there's only 1, and our Mishnah is only discussing 1 animal for the Jewish people. It seems that there were two references. So says the Gemara, my time of the Rebbe. If you have a pasuk in Vayikra, and if you have a pasuk in Bamidbar that indicate that there's more than 1 animal, so why are you saying that there's only 1 animal? Who says that the ayal that's referenced in Vayikra is the same ayal as the one that's referenced in Bamidbar? You got to bring a maramako. So says the Gemara, how does Rabbi answer? Dichsiv echad. What are you guys getting all? There's no rocket science here. The pasuk says echad. There's only one animal. Very simple. I, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, my echad. If this seems so obvious, Rabbi brings a beautiful Marimakom. You asked him, why did you say there's only one ayal if the pasuk in Vayikra and Bamidbar speaks about ayal? Because the pasuk says echad, there's only one of these animals. So if that's true, then what does Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon do with the word echad? It says the Gemara, mayuchad shebe'edro. It doesn't mean that there's only one. It means that the ones, because he says there too, the ones that you have, they have to be miyuchad shebe'edro. They have to be beautiful ones from the flock, the choicest of them. Ivan Rabbi, what do you say with that response? Where do you learn out that they have to be miyuchad be'edro? He says, I learned that out from somewhere else. Nafkalei mimivchar nidrecha. I learned that out from another place. So I'm able to figure out that it should be both. The halacha is that there's only one ayal, and it has to be miyuchad be'edro, and I can still hold of my shita without any challenge. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, what do you do with the fact that we also have the reference of mimivchar nidrecha? Says the Gemara, chad b'chova v'chad b'nedava, that this applies both when you have a chova, like our case of Yom Kippur, where you have to make sure that the animal is the choicest of the choice. And at the same time, l'chad ben adava, we also have to make sure that when there's an adava, that the animal as well is a choice animal. So each sheet is able to stand their ground. So it's inconclusive from our Gemara as to whether or not there was one ayal or if there was two. Our Mishnah clearly goes like Rebbe that there was only one. We'll stop right here, 3 lines from the bottom on Ayin Amud Beis. Tomorrow night, Emir Tashem will learn Ayin Aleph. And we are looking forward to seeing you then. Wishing you all a beautiful night.